Tonight, a brief pause in the war in Gaza to get humanitarian aid to Palestinian civilians. As the fighting resumes, pressure builds on Israel to make the truce permanent. I'm Katie Couric. Also tonight, an historic scene at the White House.
One message that I have, and I think we all share, is that we want you to succeed.
Barack Obama is welcomed into the most exclusive club in the world. And getting younger by the day, the curious face of Brad Pitt.
I'm not as old as I look.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
And good evening, everyone. The fighting stopped in Gaza today for a few hours anyway, and now there's a new push for a permanent ceasefire. Peace talks will be held in Egypt tomorrow, and representatives of Israel and Hamas will be there. But at the same time, Israeli leaders are considering whether to order an urban assault in Gaza to root out Hamas militants. During today's 3-hour truce, truckloads of food and medicine were sent in. Mark Phillips begins our coverage.
For a brief while, it all looked hopeful. The bombs stopped falling and the people emerged to see what was left of their world. The Israelis called it a recess in offensive operations, but this was a recess in which nobody went outside to play. Instead, the besieged people of Gaza came out to get what they need to survive. A convoy of about 80 trucks loaded with relief supplies was allowed to enter the strip, and the Hamas militants promised that they too would hold fire and stop launching their rockets into Israel. It was a time to retrieve those bodies of the dead which could not be collected while the air raids continued, and a time to bury those killed in the Israeli attack on a United Nations school, which has become the single deadliest episode of this war. The Israelis still insist the civilians taking shelter in the school were being used as human shields by a Hamas mortar squad. The UN says it had warned the Israelis the school was full of families seeking refuge.
Yesterday we had children, large amounts, very severe injuries, and I had children dying between my hands.
For 3 hours this afternoon, there was the taste of peace, the beginnings perhaps of an end game, but not the end, not yet. Neither side apparently has the conditions it needs to stop. And so the shelling resumed, as the Israelis said that they welcomed a proposed peace initiative, but could not yet accept a deal that did not guarantee an end to Hamas rocket fire. They again pounded the southern Gaza cross-border tunnels used to bring in weapons materials. And the Hamas rockets flew again too, as the militants said the proposal did not guarantee the Israeli blockade of Gaza would be lifted. The Israelis have released footage of prisoners they've captured, and they continue to weaken Hamas, but they have not gotten near its leadership or apparently broken its will. Yet the Israeli cabinet has put off a decision whether to go to a further phase of this operation and push forward into the urban areas to seek out Hamas fighters. While there is only talk of a potential deal, there is still fighting. And just beyond this checkpoint, the last one before the Israeli operational area around Gaza, the Israelis are making preparations for their third stage assault if the talks in Cairo are not successful. They're building a forward field hospital just a couple of miles up this road. Katie?
And Mark, does a pause in the bombing give either side any kind of strategic advantage?
Well, there was a lot of concern on the Israeli side that it would give Hamas the advantage and allow it to conciliate and regroup. And you can bet that while the Israelis weren't bombing, they still had their drones overhead, as they do right now, looking perhaps for the Hamas leadership they'd like to find.
All right. Mark Phillips reporting along the Israel-Gaza border for us tonight. Mark, thank you. Israel maintains it's been under attack for years. Today alone, Hamas militants fired 14 rockets into Israeli towns. As Richard Roth reports, the attacks have created a siege mentality on the Israeli side of the border.
See what a rocket from Gaza can do when it hits, Israelis say. Spend a while in earshot of an air raid siren or cramped in a shelter, and it's hard not to have some sympathy. Or if you want to understand what pushed Israelis past their limit, they'll tell you, just take a look at the numbers. Since the first one almost 8 years ago, the Army says, more than 11,000 rockets and mortars have been fired from Gaza at southern Israel. They've landed as far as 25 miles beyond the Gaza border, killed 15 civilians, and put as many as 1 million people in range and in fear. You wash your face and brush your teeth, a boy named Moshe told Israeli TV, and then the siren sounds. He'd no sooner said that than it did. From fortified bus stops to barren streets, rocket attacks have changed the scenery in southern Israel. They've even changed the architecture. Take an ordinary elementary school where the worry's about keeping children safe. And the solution here is put up a giant steel canopy and cover the whole building. Behind the assault on Hamas, Israel says, is a policy summed up in 3 words.
Enough is enough. And we cannot tolerate a situation in which Hamas continues to target Israel, Israel's citizens.
It's won a rare consensus here.
I feel it strongly. The country feels that they're actually winning this war, and they feel it's a just war. It may not stop Hamas rockets forever, but it's going to take them an awful, awful long time to restructure the military wing.
Victory might be defined here in other terms as not much more than buying time. Richard Roth, CBS News, Sderot, Israel.
Meanwhile, at the White House today, it was an amazing picture. All of America's living presidents meeting with the man who will soon join their exclusive club, Barack Obama. President Bush hosted a luncheon for them at Mr. Obama's request, the first ever gathering of the 39th, 41st, 42nd, 43rd, and soon-to-be 44th presidents of the United States.
One message that I have, and I think we all share, is that we want you to succeed. Whether we're a Democrat or Republican, we care deeply about this country.
For me to have the opportunity to get advice, good counsel, and fellowship with these individuals is extraordinary, and I'm very grateful to all of them.
Bob Schieffer is our chief Washington correspondent and, of course, anchor of Face the Nation. He's covered all of these presidents, usually one at a time. Bob, I understand from what you've learned, President-elect Obama was really quite moved by how gracious President Bush was today.
Well, I got a hold of a friend of Obama's who said that he really took it to heart when the president said that they all wanted him to succeed. He, according to this friend, has been very impressed with how gracious President Bush has been. He told the president today that he thought that graciousness was one of the reasons his transition has gone so smoothly. You know,
rarely are there so many former presidents who are still living. Do you think that they will play a fairly active role in an Obama administration?
Well, I think from what the president-elect was telling his friends today, he does plan to keep in contact with all of these men. This really was a remarkable picture that we saw today. The last time we had all the living presidents together at the White House was when President Reagan called former President Nixon, former President Carter, and former President Ford there before they went off to Anwar Sadat's funeral.
Bob, any idea what was on the agenda, what these presidents, former presidents and current and president-elect, what they discussed?
Well, I'm told that it was, as they say, a wide-ranging discussion. These are serious men who are used to dealing with serious issues. They did talk about the news of the day, but they talked about everything really from serious issues to the decor. At one point, President Clinton was heard to say he really loved the rug in the Oval Office.
Bob Schieffer on a very historic day at the White House. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
And that rug, by the way, bears the presidential seal. Meanwhile, Barack Obama is already dealing with the biggest problem he'll face as president, the deepening recession. A new report today says employers cut nearly 700,000 jobs last month, far more than economists were expecting. And then there's the federal deficit. The Congressional Budget Office predicted today it will reach a record $1.2 trillion this year. So what will Mr. Obama do about it? Here's Chip Reed.
President-elect Obama today seemed to be going in 2 directions at once on government spending. First, calling for budget cuts to reduce trillion-dollar deficits.
If we do nothing, then we will continue to see red ink as far as the eye can see.
Moments later, demanding nearly $800 billion in new spending.
We're going to have to jumpstart this economy.
He says the two goals are not contradictory. Government can save money by spending money. For example, making federal buildings energy efficient.
If we do that effectively, then over the long term, we are going to save billions of dollars in energy costs.
We can also save later by investing now, he says, in schools, computerized medical records, and alternative energy. But there are also signs that the stimulus bill could become a magnet for good old-fashioned pork barrel spending. Mr. Obama has banned congressional pet projects, so the lobbying has shifted to the states and cities. This wish list from the U.S. Conference of Mayors includes 3 aquatic centers in Miami for $30 million, a polar bear exhibit in Rhode Island, nearly $5 million, and a museum on the mafia in Las Vegas, 55 million smackers, the kinds of projects that could jeopardize Republican support.
We would like on the spending side, obviously, to avoid funding things like mob museums or water slides.
Fiscally conservative Democrat Charlie Melanson says no matter how hard they try to keep wasteful spending out, it will be tough because one man's jobs program is another man's pork.
We don't want to see the stimulus package loaded up with pork or loaded up with somebody's pet stuff.
Some Republicans say one way to keep wasteful spending out of the stimulus package is to loan the money to states and cities instead of giving it to them. The thinking is that if they eventually have to pay it back, they just might spend it more carefully. Katie?
Chip Reed, thanks very much, Chip. The president-elect has enlisted 3 veteran foreign policy experts to advise him on some of the world's hot spots, and that tops tonight's CBS News Transition Notebook. They are a virtual who's who of diplomats. Former UN Ambassador Richard Holbrooke, Dennis Ross, who served as special Mideast envoy under President Clinton, and Richard Haass, president of the Council on Foreign Relations. All 3 will report directly to the president. Hillary Clinton will head up the Obama foreign policy team as Secretary of State, and today the Senate Foreign Relations Committee scheduled her confirmation hearing for next week. Senate Democratic leaders met today with Roland Burris and now seem open to seating the man the embattled governor of Illinois has named to replace Mr. Obama, but say the Illinois Secretary of State must still sign off on the appointment. And we now know why the Obamas can't move into Blair House until 5 days before the inauguration. For one thing, former Australian Prime Minister John Howard will be staying there before he receives the Presidential Medal of Freedom. A staunch ally in the war in Iraq, Howard once attacked candidate Obama's call for troop withdrawals, saying if he were al-Qaeda in Iraq, he'd pray for an Obama victory. In other news, the U.S. Army is apologizing for an embarrassing mistake. It sent 7,000 letters last month to survivors of servicemen and women killed in Iraq and Afghanistan to tell them about available assistance. But each letter began, "Dear John Doe." The Army blames a printing error. Coming up next on the CBS Evening News, in this recession, business is booming, at least for credit counselors. The price of oil took a nosedive today after the government reported the supply is way up. Oil fell more than 12%, the biggest loss since just after 9/11. The recession gets the credit for lower oil prices, and the blame for this, more Americans are falling behind on their consumer loan payments. A report out today says that in the third quarter of last year, nearly 3% of loans were at least 30 days late, the most since they started keeping track 28 years ago. But as Anthony Mason reports, that's created a bull market for some.
Here's one business that's hiring.
Okay, either you can make the payment.
In Dallas, the Consumer Credit Counseling Service is adding 25 counselors.
Are you delinquent on your mortgage?
Because calls for help, which soared by more than a third last year,
Did you want to go ahead and go through the session?
are already jumping again this year.
We're probably expecting another 20 to 25% increase in call volume.
The problem started with mortgages, but now delinquencies on auto loans and home equity loans have reached record levels. And a new study says it's spreading to credit cards.
Basically, people are falling further behind?
On their credit cards, yes. And they're defaulting more, and they're paying less.
Since July, the study found balances that are more than 60 days past due have risen more than 34%, and 5% of all credit card borrowers are now more than 2 months behind.
That number again was...
At the Credit Counseling Center in Dallas, the typical client who a year ago had $21,000 in debt is now coming in with $30,000 in debt.
And as we're seeing unemployment go up to 7% and beyond, it's not just the debt level, but it's the lack of income to support the debt.
Todd Mark says the service counsels clients to call for help as soon as they sense they're in trouble.
We really serve as a triage center.
But these credit doctors say they're going to need more help in this emergency room. Anthony Mason, CBS News, New York.
And when we come back, first came the snow, now rain and floods. The Northwest gets a blast of winter. It's a tough winter for much of the country. Ice and snow in the Northeast today, and the Northwest just can't catch a break. A powerful storm is sweeping in from the Pacific, bringing heavy rain to an area already buried in snow. Dean Reynolds has the word on the weather.
The weather is, in a word, awful.
I'm not sure it's going to be too long before the highway is impassable here.
A map showed almost every state at some level of weather alert today. Mudslides, avalanches, and especially flooding. Near Seattle, snow runoff mixed with nonstop rain on the Tolt River, closing roads and threatening homes. A golf course was one big water hazard, and half a foot of more rain is on the way.
It's only going to get worse.
Near Spokane, 200 National Guardsmen were clearing snow from roads and roofs, and 700 residents outside Tacoma were urged to leave home. In New Mexico, a snowboarder survived 2 days nearly buried at the bottom of a ski run, signaling a chopper with light from his iPod.
I knew I was going to be okay. I didn't freak out or anything.
In the south, rain was falling and rivers were rising.
We haven't seen this probably in the last 5 to 6 years.
Rescuers offered practical advice.
Do not drive through water.
Ice collapsed a marina in Virginia and glazed highways in the Midwest, a warning to the Northeast facing similar conditions. But in Michigan overnight, the ice may have saved 2 people on a plane that the weather forced onto the frozen St. Joseph River. They walked away from the mishap instead of having to swim for their lives. Dean Reynolds, CBS News, Chicago.
And coming up next, reversing the aging process. Thanks to technology, Brad Pitt has discovered the fountain of youth. Finally tonight, few actors are fortunate enough to land that one role of a lifetime, but Brad Pitt chose to play an entire lifetime in one role. High-tech special effects and a healthy dose of Hollywood magic have turned the story of a man who gets younger as he gets older into a box office hit. Pitt gave us an exclusive look behind the scenes. He's known as one of Hollywood's most bankable and best-looking stars.
My name is Benjamin Button.
And in his new movie, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, Brad Pitt doesn't look a day over 75.
How old are you?
7, but I look a lot older.
Based on the short story by F. Scott Fitzgerald, Benjamin Button is about a man born in his 80s who ages backwards.
What if I told you that I wasn't getting older, but I was getting younger than everybody else?
And the film's 45-year-old leading man insisted on playing the part from the cradle to the grave.
Before, if you were attempting a film like this, you'd have to plug in different actors at different ages. Sometimes it connects, sometimes it doesn't. And in this, we got to drive the performance all the way.
So like many aging stars, Pitt had some work done. In fact, for the movie's first 52 minutes, Benjamin is completely computer-generated from the neck up.
For all intents and purposes, we effectively created a digital puppet of Brad that Brad could operate.
Visual effects artists at Digital Domain in Los Angeles began by asking Brad to make funny faces for their cameras, creating what they called the Brad Pitt Emotional Library.
You just spend the day being a jackass, doing this or doing this, or trying to map all my facial expression muscles. We did that for a few days.
Meanwhile, a series of other actors with Benjamin's physical characteristics stood in for Pitt on set. Visual effects work being what it is, the blue hoods meant they could check their vanity at the soundstage door.
With the blue hood, it allows us to erase the head fairly easily and then apply the computer-generated version of Brad onto that body.
Months after principal filming was finished, Pitt delivered his performance while watching the scene on a monitor.
What if I told you that I wasn't getting older? I see it on screen, and I'm playing off of that, and I'm reacting to that.
Then, using 3D computer models aged to perfection and loaded with that library of Bradisms, animators could finesse Pitt's digital performance to make a perfect copy of the original.
What was important to us in this process was that the emotions that Brad carries as an actor come through Benjamin.
And to button it all up, they virtually stitched the digital head onto the actor's real body.
I felt pretty good, considering.
Brad Pitt may not be ready for the old folks' home yet.
Say hallelujah.
But being an armchair actor is something he says he could really get used to.
It's really quite freeing. I'd like to do all films that way.
And that's the CBS Evening News for tonight. I'm Katie Couric. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.